This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast revisiting television sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. This week, Earth 2, episodes 10 and 11.
Our 51st day on this planet is by far our most difficult. We've traveled more than half the day and have uttered less than 3 words between us. And yet, in our minds, we all tread the same ground repeatedly. Did we do right? Did we surpass the bounds of humanity by leaving Joya? It was a very fast vote, one that swept us into its anger. Now, alone with ourselves, we're left to ponder the weight of that anger. And for some, the weight of their heart. Still, we move forward.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that worms its way into your ear before exploding in your brain. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Luke, don't talk. Dream.
That's a great line. Great line.
I thought so.
Words to live by, really.
I have it actually in a nice cursive writing above my doorway.
Oh, wonderful.
Anytime someone does anything I don't like, I'm just going to go run away.
Oh, that is funny. Obviously, we'll talk about it as we get into it. That poor actress had the worst role. I was just embarrassed for her the entire time.
And listener, that, of course, is our guest this week, returning guest Will. Welcome back, Will.
Thank you for having me.
He's got the hat trick. It's the third time here.
It's true. What were the first two? Do you guys remember?
Leonard Nimoy.
Baffled, yep.
And then, what was the second one?
It was that one where the guy went to the Earth and it was exactly the same except Florida didn't exist.
What?
Remember the guy went to the new planet and it was exactly the same, but then Florida didn't exist for some reason?
Yeah.
What was it called?
I had to look it up, and once I saw it, I was like, oh, right. It was The Stranger.
The Stranger, yeah.
Yeah.
So, before we get into this, Jordan, we're halfway through.
I know.
Can you believe it?
In some ways, it feels like it's been a long time. In some ways, it feels like the show hasn't developed at all.
But, Jordan, just think back on all the search parties we've enjoyed.
Every episode.
Will, when we were recording The Stranger, you mentioned Earth 2, and you asked if we were ever going to watch it, because this was a show you used to watch, possibly?
It's true. And having now watched a couple of episodes as an adult, I feel horrible for inflicting this on you both.
Oh, we were going to watch this anyway. This wasn't because you requested it.
Oh, okay.
I was just curious what you remembered and how it stands in your memory now that you've watched 2 episodes.
Honestly, all I remember, I would look forward to watching it. Like, my family would watch it, like my dad and my sister. I don't know if my mom ever watched it with us, but I would look forward to it every week. And that's insanity.
It's a different time.
I can't believe it.
It was a different time.
I remember being, like, absolutely baffled when they canceled it. I remember, like, how could you cancel this show? It's fantastic. And it's terrifying how horrible it is.
But it is that perspective of when you're a kid, the way you look at things is much different. You know, there's whatever you're liking about it may not be the same when you're an adult.
I just felt like, I think as a kid, I remember just liking that it was like there was so many possibilities, and there was like aliens, and there was like these jail people, and there was.
Oh, I love that you remember the jail people.
Yeah, because they weren't really in either of the episodes, right? I was actually going to ask you guys about that.
Yeah, no, we learned about the penal colonists earlier on when Tim Curry was the villain. He was like one of these criminals who came to the planet. But since they've got rid of his arc, they've been relatively removed from it. Though they do mention them in one of these episodes, but we haven't seen them in probably 3 or 4 episodes now.
I just remember thinking like, oh, it's like Australia, but another planet.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that I used to like this show. It's so wild.
Is your favorite character still Morgan?
Which one's Morgan?
Oh, yeah, he's barely even in these, isn't he? He's the guy with the, like, wrestler hair kind of ponytail.
Oh, yeah. He's like a comedian, right? In real life, isn't he?
Oh, I'm not sure.
He might be, because he's playing a comic character in these shows.
Yeah, he's just like, he always just looks like he's done like 8 lines of coke, and he's like runs into the scene. You're like, ah!
That's the
And
one.
runs away. Yeah, yeah, he's definitely top 3.
All right, you guys, should we get into these episodes?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here is the IMDb summary for episode 10, Redemption. With narration by Devon, Alonzo seeks and returns Julia to the camp. Yale is then the first to be shot by a deadly assailant, identified later by Riley as a Zed. The group must now find him and stop the threat. And that was courtesy of R.W. Zimdapa.
I have one quick question before we start. Did they ever say... I assume Zed stood for something. Z-E-D. Is that correct? Did they ever say what it stood for?
They did. They did say what it stood for.
What does it stand for?
Well, let's wait till we talk about the Zed.
Okay.
We've got a lot to get into with this Zed character. But what I liked is this one sort of places us in the timeline, because it's the first time in a while they've said how long they've been there, and this is day 51.
It feels much longer.
It's weird. It both feels longer, and at times I feel like they've been on the planet for less time as well. Like they're almost there 2 months, but sometimes it feels like they've been there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a sense of how long they've been here, but now we know. And last episode, Will, they abandoned Dr. Heller when it was revealed she was some sort of council spy in their midst. And how long would you say it's been since they've abandoned her, Jordan?
Oh, it seems about, 30 seconds or so.
I mean, it's been under 24 hours, it seems like, because Alonzo immediately turns around and goes back for her.
I think it's the second time I've had this feeling where they've had a character, they've done something sort of interesting with a character. The other one was Tim Curry's character, Gull, where they can just let it breathe for a little bit and let that person go away, and then maybe come back later in the season, have something interesting happen. And I thought that could happen with Julia. Like, leave her off in the wilderness. Who knows what's going to happen, 10 episodes down the line and when she comes back? Or even better, what if they just come across her dead body later and then you have like, oh, that was a bad decision. But instead it's like, kick it out of the group. She's back 10 minutes later.
It is weird. It is like, because, on these shows you usually want to reset to this, like, the same place. You want to be in the same place at the beginning of every episode. That's how non-serialized TV works. And this one, like, constantly is just like, oh, this is different. This is serialized. We left her behind. But they just reset to 0 at the beginning of the next episode.
Yeah.
As opposed to the end. I just didn't know why they didn't do that at the end of the last episode, if they were just going to do it at the start of the next one.
Cliffhanger.
Also, I'm just saying, I have some criticism of how this group runs their whole organization here on the planet, but she's literally the only doctor they have. So I know they voted her off, but like, guys, that's some short-term thinking. It's literally the only doctor you have. If the most minor thing happens, you can't deal with it.
And the most minor thing could happen, because this episode, as Alonzo's going back to find Julia, Danziger's going ahead on his own to scout out the path. And they get themselves into some trouble very quickly, because it's very funny. I thought maybe this whole Alonzo going to get Heller thing would be like a longer portion of this episode. But he like drives back. He gets there at night. She's hiding in the woods for some reason. And then he just picks her up and drives her back to camp.
Yeah, why was she hiding in the woods?
I don't know. She just looked terrified. She was just hiding, terrified in the woods.
I watched the teaser, like the weekly catch up, and the first 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, I think I got it all this.
You don't need a lot to get caught up.
There is a shot of her coming out of her like sphere and being like, "What? Where am I?" Looking around and being like afraid in the woods, and then Alonzo like very dramatically is like, "We can't leave her. We have to go back. How dare we?" And then there's like a bunch of people sitting around talking. And he's like, how can we leave her behind? And then one of the guys was like, well, we did vote on it. Like, we literally just had this conversation. And then he's like, no, I thought about it for 30 seconds and I had like I didn't even watch the episode before, and I got the feeling that the one character was like so annoyed that really this again? Like we just left her.
We just had this vote. You said yes. What are you so upset?
Yeah. Oh man.
Did they say it was unanimous?
I think they implied it was.
He just forgives faster than everyone else.
He just loves to forgive.
You know what's funny too is I I mean, going back, I think like 11-year-old me was probably like really worried about what was going to happen to her when like the group left her there, and I was like waiting all week to find out. But I also I thought like Alonzo was like a paraplegic. That's why he was in the go-kart.
He was for a while. He had broken his leg, so for a good 6 episodes, he couldn't walk. So that might be what you're remembering.
No, just watching this.
Oh.
What it is the vehicles they've decided that clearly can actually work. Like, they're not doing any special effects. These little vehicles can work. But I don't know how well designed they are for someone sitting in it. And so everyone looks very awkward, their leg placement. And I think that might make it look like he doesn't have the ability to move his legs because they're in such an awkward position when he's sitting.
Well, everyone else was like walking, and this like
It's true. He's just
relatively fit young man is just like in this like thing with like a bandaged foot, and I was like, oh, this guy's like a paraplegic. I wonder what happened to him. And then like the next scene, he's like walking through the woods with a gun, and I'm like, oh no, he's just a dick. Like,
it's true. He's like 25. He's the only one riding in a cart.
Yeah, like how come he got it? I don't understand. They voted on it, and then he was like, you know what? I really think I should have it.
Unanimously, I get this card. What I noticed this episode, Jordan, and this is dating back to when he had a broken leg, he's still wearing those pants that they've cut off at the like crotch, but they've just put like a white, like another, it's like he's wearing long underwear underneath it, and they've never changed that costume.
They all are still wearing the same clothes they crashed in, with maybe a change of a shirt or something. This is the worst planned restarting of society ever. They don't have any changing of clothing, let alone they have done no research into the planet, can't sustain life, nor do they know anything about the weather of the planet. Yet they want to restart a whole civilization here.
I mean, maybe it's because they crashed.
It doesn't matter if you crashed or not. They had all the supplies still.
No, the Grendlers stole all their pants, remember?
The Grendlers only took those lights, those stupid lights.
Anyway, let's move on here because yes, Solace goes. He gets Dr. Heller. He brings her back. Nobody's happy to see her, but she offers up that communications pill she's been talking with Riley on as a form of redemption, I guess. She's like, I'll give you the council communications device. Please let me back into the group. But really, before they can have any conversation about whether Dr. Heller's returning to the group, Zero picks up a projectile approaching at 200 meters per second. Thank God for Zero the robot, eh? He's always helping out.
He didn't really help that much, though.
Terrifying looking. Yeah. He's like, oh, there's a projectile. Like, that's all he does is...
Not even the direction it's coming from.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's not that helpful. He's just like, hey, by the way, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
Confirmed. It happened.
Well, everybody in the group is scrambling and trying to hit the deck and crawl around, except Yale's just standing there and he just gets hit in the chest.
Yeah.
Yale, hit the ground, buddy.
The scrambling montage, you can tell has been built from other shit. They're just scrambling to nowhere, and they're not doing anything. They're not actually trying to accomplish getting to safety or anything. They're just running and looking. And Morgan is top-notch scramble acting.
But that's what happened when a worm bullet is being shot. That's what happens. Everyone scrambles.
Yes, thank God Dr. Heller's there. Eh? Good thing old Solace brought her back, because they need her immediately to pull a bullet out of Yale, and it is a worm bullet. What's a worm bullet, you guys?
Will?
It's an ingenious invention where the bullet isn't designed to be a bullet. It's designed to bore into your body. So it's really just a different way of killing you and a meaner way of killing you.
I like when they pull it out of him. You can see it's got a little drill head on it, and it's still spinning.
Yeah.
It is funny, though. You're right. It's just, for some reason, a more cruel way of killing someone, which I'm not sure why. Do you think they would just have a more effective way? A bullet that explodes or has a higher impact. But no, they're like, we just like it happening real slow.
Yeah. It's actually a worse bullet than just a normal bullet. Because you have an hour to get it out of your body. It's just screenwriting 101 stakes wrapped up in a bullet. It's you need the ticking clock, you need an explosion at the end. It's hilarious.
There is actually a scene midway through the episode where they're talking about this bullet and how it bores through you and how it takes an hour. And literally the only person who says this is Morgan Martin. He turns around and he's just why did anyone invent this? And no one answers him.
I love, like, it's probably like one screenwriter making fun of another screenwriter, like in the script, like whoever came up with, like, in the room for the like the bullet idea, the other screenwriters like making fun of him by making the character be like, why would anyone do this?
But because they want to know why someone's shooting at them and how this is happening, and they assume it's Riley from the council must be behind it, Devin sends Dr. Heller back into the virtual to, find out what's going on. It's very funny because she hops in there, and Riley immediately is just like, wait, someone's shooting at you? Listen, I didn't send them after you. Is it a worm bullet? And they're like, yes. He's like, okay, you got to go and get that worm bullet. It's about to explode.
Yeah.
And there's a race as it's beeping to grab this bullet they've already taken out of Yale. And then they throw it into, I guess, the distance. And this has to be the worst effect this show has ever done, right?
Definitely the worst.
I bought it.
You bought it. That explosion for you was like top notch.
And I was like, oh.
Well, it is weird on a show that uses a lot of practical effects and any sort of visual effects they have done.
And is very high budget.
Yeah, and they've done pretty well. Like, it's looked pretty good. Like, the guys who go into the sand and all the little puppets and stuff. But for whatever reason, these explosions this episode are, like, comically bad.
There's like 3 of them, too. I just kept watching them. Like, what happened? Did they, they just blew the budget, and when they got to the explosions, they're like, oh, no. It's clip art all the way now.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, I noticed that Amblin was the producer. Do you think, like, Spielberg was watching it and being like, oh, yeah, that's fine?
I think at this point in this series, Spielberg had stopped watching rough cuts.
He was too busy watching the cuts for Animaniacs.
Oh, true.
Well, for some reason have decided that was his passion project this time, so he ignored Earth 2.
I also, when they, like, go to get the bullet out of the person that got shot, I, like you, was very happy that the group had their doctor back. And then all she does is, like, turn on her hand and then, like, scan it over his body. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to leave someone to die in the woods, at least take her magical arm from her so you can, like, diagnose yourselves.
It's a good point. That Nintendo Power Glove she has is most of her job.
Yeah, the Nintendo Power Glove is amazing.
But very quickly, what we come to find out is this shooter who's out there shooting at them is a ZED, which stands for, Jordan, Zero Emotional Defects.
I didn't catch that. I knew they were super soldiers, but I didn't know their major problem is emotional.
They're offshoots of the Yale program designed to make the perfect soldier, and that actually just made me like desperately want to know what Yale stands for now.
Oh yeah, I suppose that's true.
My best guess was I wrote it down: Youthful Android Life Entity.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But given that like Z stands for zero emotional defects, like I'm just like it could be like that's not even a description of what you describe a thing as.
We're going to get to see him soon, but I would describe him as a Borg from Star Trek and Dennis Hopper from the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, he's got that hair.
Yeah.
He's just a bad ripoff of Universal Soldier.
That's my exact note. He's like, it's a Universal Soldier.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get Dolph Lundgren?
Unavailable. What I noticed, Jordan, I'm going to address this to you because you're the only one who watched this series with me, but he has like one ear cup over one ear, which reminded me of Ficus from Quark.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Same basic idea as that character.
It's probably just sitting in some studio somewhere and they just keep grabbing it for stuff.
But essentially, what Zed has is he has boosted senses, he has organic armor, which I guess means his skin is invulnerable.
But he is wearing bits of armor too, right?
Well, he's got a leather jacket on. He's got a cool all-leather outfit.
We never got to see the motorbike that went with that.
And he only has one weakness, which Riley will reveal to them at some point, is that there's a soft piece of his skin at the base of his neck.
Yeah, for some reason.
And I don't know if you caught his modus operandi, but it's very funny.
What's that?
He has basically a computer-style list of criteria for who he kills in a group of people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He starts with someone who has a weapon, correct?
Yeah, weapons first.
Then technology.
Then it goes, he kills from largest to smallest. And yeah, those worm bullets he uses, how they like to kill is they aim for the extremities and then allow for that hour for the bullet to bore through the body into the torso before it explodes and vaporizes them.
Terrifying.
They basically, apparently they started getting used during the mining province uprisings of the late 2180s, where they killed hundreds of miners.
That's ironic. The mining bullet kills the miners.
Yeah, they could have just been shooting it right into the walls. This guy, Zed, we'll just call him, I actually think it's a pretty good plot for an episode, especially, like it's that Western sort of plot. You have the caravan going through a dangerous area, and there's some sort of bad cowboys that are, snipers or something like that. But I never got a sense through this entire episode, any sense of dread or worry for the people. Like, it's not like they were pinned down and anytime they moved, he was shooting or anything. It's like he shot one person. He's like, I'll see you guys later next week. I just didn't sense any sort of, like there was any sort of worry at all.
You make a good point. It would have been more in the line of that old Westy pioneer thing where if they were pinned down and having to like stay down. I mean, basically what happens after they kind of learn all about the Zed and that he like killed all these military officers, so they like scrapped the program of Zeds because they were too unstable. Immediately after that, someone else does get shot. Like it is almost like that for a second because Yale gets shot, they learn all about the Zed, and then Alonzo gets shot in his broken leg again.
Yeah, that poor leg. He should have taken that bone juice.
And basically, like, again, we just get another scene where they pull the bullet out, throw it, another explosion. But after that, you're right, like, there's very little to do. We kind of cut away to Danziger because he's turned off his comms deck for some reason. So he's just wandering around the woods with no idea this thing's hunting them. And he kind of stumbles across the Zed camp. He calls in and, like, warns them. He's like, I found something. They're like, yes, we know. Where have you been? And then he himself gets shot in the leg and captured by the Zed, basically. And this is the stakes of the episode, is like, can we get to Danziger in an hour before the bullet gets to his torso and explodes?
We've seen that sort of thing many times in TV shows where someone is injured and they only have so much time or something similar. But I didn't get that sense of this episode at all. I mean, maybe it just took too long to get there, but like I wasn't worried that Danziger was going to run out of time. There was plenty of time.
I mean, it's one of those things in these shows. You never worry Danziger's going to die.
I think also they were too busy with this like redemption plot of the Doctor, like in the caravan.
And she's not even really that redeemed. She's just like it's like they remember how useful it is to have a doctor.
Well, she like grabs the gun and like runs out, and she's like, "Shoot me, take
that's
me!"
True.
And I was like, "Wow, what did this girl do?" Because they're really trying to like get the audience back on side with her.
It is funny, and it is just like we never see anyone react to it. It is like she's really hamming it up. We're like, look at how much you need me.
What would be funny is while she's doing that and she's really trying to make herself a martyr, but everyone's looking in the other direction so no one notices at all. That's the shot they should have had.
Yeah.
But basically what we kind of learn once Danziger's shot is the Zed wants to take a blood sample from him, and he starts asking Danziger questions about being on Earth 2. I believe when Danziger's like, I'm not going to answer your questions, the Zed says, you obey or you die.
Yeah.
Which is great stuff. This is Universal Soldier I'm a big fan of.
Well, it seemed like he can also control the bullet. So they're like the bullet's engineering just becomes more and more impressive as the show goes along.
But essentially what we learn about him is he has been set up on Earth 2 because he's sort of catching these penal colonists who were sent there earlier, shooting them in the leg, taking some blood samples, doing a little bit of a survey, getting their name so he can attach it to the blood samples, and then shooting that to the council so they can like get information on what it's like to live on Earth 2 it's like a study. It's like a weird study on wild criminals to figure out how to civilize Earth 2.
I love that he has to do paperwork as a sniper.
Like his whole job. No, he's basically just like some biologist who has to go in the woods and like catch that panda they put a tracker in and find out how it's doing.
Yeah. It was an amazing reveal to find out the Universal Soldier was really just like a bureaucrat.
Yeah. He just had this form. He's like, look, I know it's annoying. I have to answer these questions, but I just need you to answer your name. Please. We got to start this.
I gotta label the sample, man.
Yeah.
Just give me your name.
That was my favorite part of the whole episode. I'm like, oh, this guy's not that bad. He's just got to get his work done.
That's true. And what we kind of learn through this is that the council has been testing 5 possible planets for resettlement. I guess via similar methods, penal colonists and Zed units tracking them. And they've been doing it on 5 planets, but Earth 2 has been the most promising.
I don't know why. It's got electric water.
And those other planets are even worse, man. There's electricity everything. And essentially they've been keeping it, because this is what my question was too. I'm just like, man, oh man, if they're doing all of this, how did Devon even get to come? Like, why did they not stop this? But I guess that was why they tried to blow up the ship. They're trying to stop it from getting here. But it's been done in secret by the council because they're trying to avoid a mass population exodus from the satellites that would rival the, quote, 81 Skylift.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that.
I love it when they drop this weird stuff. I'm just like, the Exodus will be worse than the 81 Skylift. I'm like, oh man, tell me more about the 81 Skylift. But essentially, because Danziger turns on his comms and they're able to listen in on the conversations he's having with his dad, the Eden Project's able to kind of track down approximately where they are. And they kind of decide they want to take the Z unit alive in the hopes of, getting some more information, I guess, about Riley off of them. So they execute a plan to distract the Z and, I guess, disable him while getting Danziger. And this involves, because it tracks technology and guns, they give Zero the robot a gun and then send him off to distract the Z monster thing. I don't know why I think he's a monster now.
He's just a bureaucrat. He's not a monster, Luke.
Him and Morgan are monsters. Did they send the Baines, the side character who suddenly gets all these lines? He gets a heroic moment where he has to try to take down the Z.
We've said it before. There's a very large cast here, and sometimes I know with shows that have large casts, they have difficulty having everyone have a moment. But I like that they have these two side characters, Baines and whatever that woman with the mushroom cut is. And it's like, oh, we have extra dialogue, we'll just give it to those people. It's like, but you already have 11 main characters that you could give any of these lines to.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because they gave him the chance to take down the Z. I'm like, wow, they're really giving him a starring part of this role. At any rate, though, that doesn't go work, so Heller intervenes and uses her council talk to trick him into thinking she's working for Riley or something, and then she's able to use her hypo spray to sedate him via the base of his neck. So they capture him. In the process, she gets her hand broken. So now it's up to Devon to use the Nintendo Power Glove to do surgery on Danziger to get the bullet out. Mm-hmm. Clearly, anybody could do her job.
If I was her, I would have said, no, there's no way you can do it. I still have to do it with my broken wrist, because they've already kicked her out once. And now they've probably just realized, oh, all she is that Power Glove.
Yeah, what did she do in the last episode that everyone got mad at her for?
Treason.
Oh, yeah, you told me already. That she's talking to the guy from Lost.
Yeah, exactly.
And they didn't like that, and then they didn't mind it.
And then they decided she's forgiven now that she saved 3 of their lives. And, this is basically what happens is we come to this end. They've captured the Z. The Z kind of explains a few more pieces of information we need, like where Riley has been this whole time. Apparently, he's on a satellite orbiting Earth 2. That's where the council's set up. They've got some sort of secret council satellite. And apparently he's also lost track of all these Z units. The Zed's complaining. He's like, I've got 14 reports in my data bank. No one's picked them up. I'm just trying to file them.
He really is just like a bureaucrat. It's hilarious.
And what does he do because he can't take it anymore?
Well, he's like, I'm not, because they're trying to convince him they work for Riley. He's like, no way am I going back up to that satellite to have another bureaucratic meeting. I'm taking a cyanide tablet and dying.
And he really wanted, his last wish was please take these files I've been working on.
Yeah, he's like, don't make all my paperwork, and please don't make my work in vain. At least take it.
I was a little sad. I was really hoping they were going to have this Zed on their team now, because he was a character I was really enjoying watching. The actor playing him was very entertaining to me, just half bureaucrat, half unstoppable soldier. But also seemed to kind of not like his job. I was like, oh, he should just join the cast.
It would be funny if this show, you said it earlier, is that they are very interested in just resetting all the time. But how interesting would it be in a show if every episode, a character is gone and they're replaced by someone else? Julia's gone. Now we got Universal Soldier. The other guy's gone, and then now there's a Grendler with them. It'd be great if the cast just changes every week, and by week 10 you're like, I don't even know who these people are.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, even if you had a few core cast and then you had guest stars who did 3-episode arcs, and you just constantly replace them with new guest stars.
But instead we have Julia with her broken wrist.
Well, we do know there are more Z units, so I have a feeling we're going to see this guy again.
Well, not him, but someone who also has Dennis Hopper's Koopa hair.
In my mind, they're just going to be the same actor every time. But essentially what happens at the end, it wraps up with Dr. Heller returning to the virtual to confront Riley about this Zed that's been hunting them. And Riley's just like, well, bad news for you. You won't tell me your location, but there's only so many Zed territories, so you really narrowed it down. I feel like before he didn't know where they're on the planet, but now he's like, there's 14 possible places I think you can be now. And then, like, the entire cast of the Eden Project jumps into the virtual and reveals that, like, the jig is up. We know all about your secret plans. And then Julia, like, throws her her communications pill off the side of the cliff. And I guess we've set aside the Riley Council plot for a while. And Julie's forgiven. Everything's back to normal.
And that guy never got to file his paperwork.
Truly the biggest tragedy of the episode.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking about Universal Soldier? If, like, that guy had a Tinder profile in, like, Toronto.
Go on.
Like, there's, like, you know, he'd get some likes, I feel like. You know, like, that sweet hair and, like, that leather jacket and, like, really good at paperwork.
He's not a bad-looking man.
Yeah. He was, like, missing an eye, I think, but, like, still, like, really had a lot of confidence.
I think he'd be better in texting, though, than in person. I think his conversational skills aren't great.
See, this is the missed opportunity, man. Keep him on the cast. Now you have another bureaucrat who's a robot. Morgan's jealous of him because he thinks Bess is in love with the robot man.
Maybe.
Be great episodes.
I also was wondering, like, what acting school did Clancy Brown go to between Earth 2 and Shawshank Redemption? Because it's like, there's a disparity in skills between those two performances.
I don't think it's the performance. I think it may be the material.
Clancy Brown, unfortunately, is saddled with grumpy old man who loves to work on cars.
Oh man, it was like so funny to see him.
He is a treat. It is a treat to see him on this show, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't get much to do. All right, you guys. Next episode.
Episode 11.
Here's the IMDb summary for Moon Cross, with narration by Alonzo.
We took comfort in knowing that in seeing Mary, the spirits of her father and mother finally rested. The outcast Terrians who had slaughtered them could also finally rest. And the chance for making a better home was where it belonged. In the hands of all living species who share this second Earth.
With narration by Alonzo, the approaching winter prompts Yuli to reveal the location of Mary's garden, a vacated dome. Alonzo later meets Mary, a woman whose strange past is revealed when the moons cross in the sky. And that, of course, again, was courtesy of R.W. Zimdapa.
If there's something I noticed from this episode, and I think we've had it in other shows, Luke, I find any character like Mary, who we're going to meet in this show, I just find these characters annoying. I hate that there's a plot that sci-fi seems to do. It's like, what if we find this wild person and we have to, like, teach them how to be human again? I just don't want to hear it. I don't want to see the actor pretend to be, you know, animalistic. It's just embarrassing for everyone involved.
It's terrible, and, like, she speaks perfect English, but she's, like, talking slow, like she's just learned the language or something. It's like, no, you have every single word. You don't need to, like...
Yeah, you either don't know or you do know.
Yeah.
She's just very pedantic with her delivery.
This is a very voiceover-heavy episode. Alonzo's going to be our main voiceover person, but he basically has to explain everything because there's so much Terrian lore, and what we know about the Terrians is they don't speak. So it's just constant voiceover of Alonzo trying to explain to us what exactly we're seeing going on.
Early on, it's in one of these first scenes where he's giving his voiceover. He says something that I really enjoyed. He's talking about, I think he's like, oh, it started, the weather got cold, and I thought that was going to be the worst thing, but as usual, I was wrong. And I thought, is he usually wrong? That's not something we've seen. Is this just something we're supposed to know about him?
We never actually see him much in these episodes, but off screen, he's always, like, predicting what's going to happen that day, and he's just always gets it wrong.
It just was such a weird thing to put in the voiceover. Like, as usual, I was wrong. I'm like, okay.
Because he was worried about the bullets, but then he realized he has to worry about the explosion.
That's true.
I also just want to say, like, that when Luke was reading the description, like, also, by the way, whoever's doing the synopses is nailing it. It really does, like, give you a bird's eye view of just, like, how many plot points they're throwing into a single episode. It's like, okay, you have the moon crossing, you have this, like, sacrificial aliens, and then you have, like, the ghost. It's crazy.
There's so much to get into this episode. It's crazy. Like, basically, Alonzo reveals via voiceover that the Terrians are telling him that the two moons above Earth 2 are about to cross, and that means it's time for Yuli to come join the Terrians. Devin, of course, is displeased because it involves her son. I believe she says, at some point she complains, she's like, we saved them from Gaul. Like, what more do they want from me? My son's cured, but I've done enough for them. Thank you very much.
even though they made it as clear as this particular alien can that they've only healed her son, there's strings attached with this healing they've done. But she still thinks like, oh, well, I got what I wanted.
And we helped them that one time. Isn't that enough?
Yeah, exactly.
But also, as you mentioned, winter is coming, so they're needing to find shelter so they can survive the winter. So they're kind of looking around for a place to like hunker down. But Yuli's had a vision that a place nearby that they can stay at. So he runs off to show them this abandoned geodesic greenhouse dome that he calls Mary's Garden.
Just before he shows them where this geodome thing is, I can't remember, one of the characters has surveyed the area to see which direction they should go in or if there's a good place for shelter. And they're like, we've tried south and we've tried west. Maybe we'll go east. And they're like, there's nothing around here. And then Yuli walks 2 feet and goes, hey, there's a thing right here.
Yeah.
Guys, like you have the worst people searching for things.
Yeah, the kid found it 5 feet away from him.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, sorry, I forgot to look to the left.
So I didn't use my eyes.
Zero was like, I know there's something around here, but I don't know.
Yeah, Zero's just can't narrow in on anything. He's like, well, there's something around here somewhere. Couldn't tell you where, though.
I really just felt like this episode was like Game of Thrones. There's like winter is coming, and there's like romance with like a wildling who like hasn't bathed in a long time, and like, you know, oh, like
good comparison.
This show is exactly like Game of Thrones. You're right.
Production value was like basically the same.
This geodesic dome they found is clearly built by humans and has been abandoned for about 15 to 20 years, they figure. There's even like a little project logo on the side that no one recognizes. And they ask Yale, since he has that Wikipedia in his brain, to try to figure out what it is. But he's forced to stop because apparently this logo has something to do with his pre-wash identity. So his aversion mechanism won't let him dig into those files.
But getting back to the geodome, and sorry, I don't want to harp on this too much, but they find the dome, and inside you see there's plants and stuff, and it has like some self-perpetuating heating system, I guess, and watering system. And I get that. But how is that going to help them? They're all not going to be able to get in there. Are they somehow going to connect? Because what we see is them setting up tents around it. I'm like, but those tents will still be cold.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
I think it's just going to be there as an emergency, maybe. Like, if things get really cold, they'll all move inside. It was unclear. They hadn't set up a plan yet. They do mention, though, that they found more structures they could build nearby.
Oh, maybe.
And that those structures had winter clothes. Like, it was all, like, it very conveniently had everything they needed for the winter, I think, was the idea.
They're like, and just my size.
Yeah, it was so weird because, like, the dome did not look warm. It's, like, paper thin outside. I was like, well, that's not going to be better.
Future material.
Also, I don't know, like, exactly, like, a lot about how moons and suns work, but I'm pretty sure the moons don't make it winter. I'm pretty sure you need the star to
I think that might have been unrelated.
Really? I thought the moon crossing was why it was winter. Why winter was coming, no?
I felt that was just unrelated information.
I think it's unrelated too. But what I like is I think if you are setting up a biodome on a planet and you need to have all your supplies and stuff you need, if you're going to bring a chair, I would say a rocking chair is the one you bring.
Well, let's go back.
It's the creepy sound.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Yale really quickly because he can't search this because it's out of his pre-wash identity. So he can't search what this logo is. But he does very quickly retrieve his own memories, I guess. I guess those are still in his head somewhere. And he realizes that this logo belongs to a group of radical biologists who wanted to use these domes to preserve plant life from Earth. So somehow we have now radical biologists from 20 years ago also settled Earth. Like, how many people have settled Earth 2 before them?
I mean, maybe the whole point is that just how little information people living on these space colonies or whatever the space stations have been receiving. But it does seem like every episode they're like, oh yeah, by the way, these people are also here. Oh, by the way, these people are also here.
To layer, I mean, this is basically new information, though I think you and I, Jordan, have seen this maybe coming. But to layer on new information, this geodome greenhouse is also haunted.
Yeah. Well, it may be or may not be. It's very weird because I actually thought when we first, because what we're going to see very soon is almost a kind of classic horror sort of thing. Like there might be ghosts and chairs are creaking and sort of things. And I thought, weird, they're going to do like almost like a Halloween episode, but that's not what they do.
Nope.
Quite truly, I think we can officially say there is an afterlife on Earth too, because yeah, there's a rocking chair that spooks Devin. She truly sees a ghost sitting in it at some point. It's crazy. We have now basically added to Earth 2's mythology a full active afterlife.
I just loved how like the ghost and that woman like had just so much in common. They just like really care about their children. You know, they have.
I mean, that is Devin's only character trait, it feels like.
Yeah, it is her only character trait. She's a mom.
So is that ghost.
So is that ghost. And those weird phantom Terrians attack the dome while she's in there.
Didn't this feel like this was like 4 episodes that they just went, oh, we'll just take a piece of all these leftover and we'll just jam all together? It makes sense. Winter, moons, ghosts, weird woman who makes odd noises. It all fits.
Terrian afterlife. The Terrians that like aren't allowed to die, so they're just pissed and like going around stealing children.
If you're not allowed to go to the afterlife and you're irritated, I think the best way to show it is by growing like a ponytail.
Let's get into that, because this night that's happening where this haunting's going on, Solace is also sleeping away from camp for some reason. He seems to have moved away from camp, where he's attacked by these outcast Terrians in his sleep.
And they're a little bit rougher around the edges.
These are the ponytail ones you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And he's saved by this young woman we've mentioned. We'll find that her name is Mary, but she's covered in dirt and she's been raised by Terrians. Classic raised by wolf situation.
Will, what does the noise sound like that she makes? That's pretty good.
It is. They have like a weird.
I've been doing it all morning.
They talk to the Terrians, and it's like a weird dolphin noisy kind of thing. I was also doing it after the episode. I was like,
I was trying to figure out if it was like I'm in danger, or I need your attention, other Terrians, or like I'm upset, or I'm just like. But it's actually like a range of. It means anything.
I was listening to a completely unsubstantiated conversation about Vin Diesel playing I'm Groot in those movies, and they were saying there's like the rumor, I guess, is that he goes in and he records each one of those individually, and apparently he insists on being told what his motivation is every time before he says I am Groot.
No way.
That's what this. It's unsubstantiated rumors, but I just want to believe that Vin Diesel's like in a room being like, "What's my motivation here? Am I afraid? Am I happy? Okay, great. I am Groot."
Yeah. Well, I just love that like Vin Diesel has finally committed to his craft.
But that is, I feel, just like these things. It's like you're like you're talking to Terrians, just make a sound. You're like, but what's the sound mean? I don't care. Who cares? Just make a sound.
In defense of this actress, she's trying. She's like, I'm gonna give it everything I can give. If she's got to walk from point A to point B, she's gonna do it big. And if she's got to make her little call, it's going to be big, you know, and she's given it for not a lot to work with.
Yo, she's just fine. Like, I actually, like, don't hate this episode. She's, like, doing a lot with, like, the weird plot she's been dropped into.
Yeah.
I laughed every time she did the sound, though. Every single time.
It's a great
sound.
sound.
What did it sound like again?
But essentially what happens is these outcast Terrians attack Alonzo. Mary shows up, drives them away, and then she just also knocks Alonzo unconscious.
Yeah.
She bonks him. It's like a classic, like... just...
Classic caveman bonk.
Yeah. It was very, Animaniacs.
This is where Steven Spielberg's influence came in.
Yeah.
But, like, he goes into the dream world where he, like, experiences what's going on with the Terrians, but then he also wakes up from the dream and is just also in the same cave he was in the dream. I was like a little lost here a bit, but basically what Alonzo explains to us is that when the two moons cross, it's called the moon cross happens, if you will. The Terrians have a ritual known as going in. That felt like no one put in much effort into coming up with a ritual.
Yeah.
But what it is the Terrians go into this big misty pit that's, I guess, lighted by the moon, and they return to the Earth. And this is, I guess, their equivalent of dying or going to heaven. Like, they basically just get to return to the Earth. We've been theorizing that they are part of this planet. Like, the planet and the Terrians are the same. I think this is pretty much saying that in their return to the Earth. And as you mentioned, the outcasts have been banned from ever dying for the crimes they've committed. So that's why they're, I guess, very menacing during Mooncross, because they're like, let us die. We don't want to live forever.
Very existential of the episode too.
It's a very existential episode. And then also, while Alonso's learning all this about Mooncross and going in and all this dying, this Mary character is just like, also, have you tried out a Terrian bed before?
Do you guys feel like this show, they did 6 episodes and then they got like a 21 episode order, and then they were just like had to write it all in like a week, and they're like, okay, it's like going in. Okay, yeah, great, okay, just move on. And like on to the next thing.
I felt like this was just like they got to episode 11 and were like, oh man, we have all this backstory in the Bible we haven't done anything about. Let's just overload it in this one episode.
In terms of the world building, I think the show has been pretty good and pretty subtle. But in terms of the mythology, it feels like the writers feel it's too much to get across. So they're like, just vomit it all over the audience in voiceover.
This episode in particular.
Or dreams or whatever. Like
Yeah.
They have like so many different ways of just like info dropping on you.
But Jordan or Will, either one, what happens when Alonso uses a Terrian bed? And also, what is a Terrian bed?
I'll let Jordan field this one.
Is this the part where she just pushes him into a wall and the wall, he like glows a little bit and he's like, that was real good.
yeah, he's like, I see your point. And then, but as the audience, we're like, what did that wall just tell you?
You know, what would have been funnier? I'm not saying they wanted a funnier scene, but what would have been funnier is he was pushed against the wall, he was like, that's real good, and they had a long shot and he had an erection.
Just a stain.
Oh, yeah. She's like, I could see it was good.
Yes, I guess this is I guess to prove the point of why she wants to stay with the Terrians, is because they have these like whatever they're doing down there. It's pretty cool.
But it is just getting pressed against a wall, right?
Yeah, but then you glow for some reason. He's like, I think he says it's better than flying or something. Like,
yeah, it felt like flying, but it changed his perspective, which like I imagine after you fly, you just can fly.
I was also interested in that apparently the Terrians can teach the power to like sink into the ground, because we see that like Mary girl like sink into the ground at some point too, the same way the Terrians do. I'm like, oh, I guess anybody can just learn this power.
She's been biologically affected, Luke, but not as much as Yuli.
That's true. We do find out she's been affected, but she's not linked to the Terrians like Yuli is, because that would really undercut the core story of this.
I love that they have to get that in. They have to say, because Yuli's important as this sort of a messiah figure, or that's what they're setting up to be. But then they're like, oh, we have this other character. Let's do something with the Terrians. And they're like, oh, wait, that undercuts everything we're doing with this mythology. So she's not important. She's here, but she's not important. So don't worry about it, guys.
At any rate, Mary basically says, hey, tonight's Mooncross. Alonso, you got to bring Yuli back for Mooncross. He's got to see Mooncross. You can't let him miss it. And Alonso's just like, yeah, sure, why not? But in the meantime, like, we got a whole day before Mooncross. Why don't you come back, meet the Eden Project, hang out with some humans? It'll be a great time.
Yeah.
And this is the part that I hated. I hate the thing where we have to have a scene of her being like, hug? Do you hug me? I like? And I was like, oh, I don't care. I don't want to hear this. It's so stupid.
It paid off when he explains to her what touching is, and then like later she's like, oh yeah, buddy showed me about touching, and everyone kind of just looks at each other like, oh no, he's gonna get me too.
You know what's funny about that though? They want to play up that Julia might be jealous. They're like, Alonso taught me about touching later, and they have to have a reaction shot for everyone. But for some reason, they also do a reaction shot of the little girl. I'm like, she doesn't know what's happening.
I really like that, because you're right. Like, it's a real fish out of water scene, and like apparently the Terrians don't touch each other or something. So she's shocked when she has to like hold Alonso to like ride in the car with him, and he explains hugging to her.
It's a classic. Girl getting on the back of the motorbike.
To later do a scene where she's with all of the women from the show. Like, all the women are with her, giving her a bath to clean the dirt off her. And then she out of nowhere says, Alonso taught me about touching. And you literally, all those individual shots where they're all giving looks like, oh, Alonso molested this woman.
Yeah.
Just like such a weird piece of comedy. But no one follows up on it either. No one's just like, we should find out what she means by this.
Yeah, that was like it was indicative of the time, you know, like, oh, like, we're just not going to touch that one. Like, no pun intended. Everyone's just like, oh.
Classic Alonzo.
Well, let's look the other way.
Yeah, it is a whole fish out of water thing. Like, they're all explaining things to her about how, yeah, this is what being human is. Let's test you and find out how human you are. Like, Devin explains to her, it's like, oh, this is where you grew up, in this dome with your family. Also, here are your parents' skeletons where they were murdered.
Oh, yeah.
It did seem like they were asking a lot of her, knowing that she, at best, might have a fragile state of mind. They were just like, hey, by the way, is your name Mary? It's Mary. Oh, this is your parents. They're dead, by the way. It's like, okay, just leave her.
But
she just learned how to touch.
They do pile a lot onto her.
Did you guys find it funny that, like, in the same subplots where, like, the Terrians are, like, dying or, like, going in is, like, the ultimate, like, freedom from, like, worry or stress, and, like, the people that are alive are, like, in pain and, like, suffering, whereas on the other side, it's like the other subplot is how someone has died and has, like, all this pain and suffering and, like, death.
stuck in a terrible afterlife.
Yeah.
That is very funny.
You know, where do you guys stand on this? You know?
Where do I stand on the afterlife?
Yeah.
I'm pro ghosts being haunted by their undone things in life and having to live in a terrible limbo. That's where I like it.
I personally feel really bad when I see ghosts that for some reason in the afterlife are still like doing work, because I'm assuming this ghost that we see, like, she still looks like she's like taking samples and stuff, and I was like, oh man, even in the afterlife she's still got to do this stuff. You think she could like just relax?
So you want a Terrian death?
I want a Terrian death, yeah, absolutely. Well, no, first what I want to do is I want to get on that wall, because apparently it's real good, and then I want to go into the Terrian. I want to go in.
You're going in, eh?
I'm going in big time.
There's also kind of, as she's like, you know, meeting humans, they're bathing her, they're getting back to it, getting her back to humanity, letting her get a taste of it since she's been Terrian so long. There's also a quick scene where she's training Yulian to use the Terrian electro zapper staffs they have, which is a kind of a fun scene. She has her setting up like jugs,
water bottles, yeah,
and he's shooting them off the thing, and it's just very funny because they're doing this outside, and someone comes in and like finds Devin. He's like, Devin, you better get outside and see this. And she goes outside, and she's so mad at her son. She's like, how dare you teach my son a skill? I'm furious about it.
Similar to the thing you said, though, with, like, apparently anyone can go into the ground like the Terrians. Apparently anyone can use the staff, too. I mean, maybe it's just because it's Yuli, but I was just kind of like, oh, I thought that was, like, something special they did. They were able to, like, wield this thing, you know?
I think it's because she's been sort of turned Terrian. Like, there's some sort of crossover supposed to be happening there, I think, and now he's getting Jedi training, basically.
Right. Also, I should say, the Yuli kid, if it hadn't been evident yet, he's not a very good actor. So the more dialogue they give him, you're just like, oh, this kid is just painful to watch.
But all of this is basically leading up to this idea that, like, obviously Yuli should go hang out for Mooncross with the Terrians because he obviously has some connection with him, and Devin will not allow it. She's just like, there's no way, you're not allowed to see the Terrians. You're staying here. And as night falls, we see Mary go and hear the ghost of her mother calling to her from that from the greenhouse. Of course, Devin hears it too because she's in tune with mother ghosts.
Her plotline in this episode is Devin hears things and goes to look for it, but doesn't tell anybody. That's her plotline.
And we basically get a scene where the ghost mom and Mary have a touching reunion that gives the ghost closure, so she can cross over to the afterlife, I guess.
So she can go in.
So she can go in, exactly. And we get to learn that apparently it was the outcasts that killed her parents and stole... the outcasts killed her parents, and then the Terrians adopted Mary because they felt bad the outcast killed her parents. There's no indication as to why the outcasts did this. They got a lot of anger in them. And this sort of fills out Mary's backstory. And while this is happening, Yuli sneaks off in one of the go-karts to go visit the Terrians for Mooncross. And on his way, he bumps into these outcast Terrians, which at first I thought were taking him hostage. But then when he gets to kind of the cave where you go in, Yuli basically negotiates with the Terrians a forgiveness. Like, he just negotiates with them to let the outcast Terrians finally die. So he's like some sort of... You're right, he's some sort of Messiah character.
But there's something I thought weird about this, because we're going to go through a couple more scenes before the end of the episode, but he goes to negotiate and convinces the other Terrians to let these outcasts come and die. But then at the end of this, they act as if he was sort of in a trance of sort or controlled by the Terrians themselves. So then my point is, if he doesn't remember any of this and he was controlled by the Terrians, why would the Terrians have put thoughts in his head to bring the outcast in if they didn't want the outcast in.
Here's how I read it, because he brings them to the death pool. He goes into the death pool with them. I was just like, what's going to happen when Yuli goes in? But he just climbs out after Mooncross ends.
It's just a lot of dry ice anyway.
Yeah, he climbs out after Mooncross ends, and he doesn't kind of remember anything that's happened. What I think it is I think that Yuli, I think you're right, I think Yuli is a messiah of some sort, but there's like a secondary... Like, there's a secondary personality or something in him, like, that's the Messiah that takes over for his body. Because as they say, like, they kind of imply that when Mooncross happens, which is why they wanted Yuli to come there, is he goes full Terrian, or he becomes the full Terrian Messiah or something.
Right.
So his little boy personality gets, I guess, shunted down somewhere, and he becomes this, like, higher being or something. So he goes full Terrian during Mooncross. I think that's the idea, but you're right. It was like... It's just another new layer on top of... Like, there's so many new, like, mythology layers added to this episode. Like, it's just, like, so much happening. Mm-hmm. In a show where nothing has happened for so long.
Every episode, they're kind of traveling somewhere, and then something happens to kind of build onto either mythology or learn something about the characters. But it doesn't... I don't know. It doesn't seem to amount to much.
I mean, Will was blown away.
To be honest, there was so much different shit happening, and I was like... I had to look up if that boy was the same boy from Jurassic Park.
Everyone who's come on this show about this has said the same thing. They're like, is that the kid from Jurassic Park?
Yeah, it is not.
Nope.
But yeah, I was just like, all right, when is this going to wrap up?
You're just checking out. You're like, this is too much information.
This is insane.
But I mean, basically the episode wraps up with the Eden Project basically hunkers down for winter in the dome, and then Mary chooses to go live with her Terrian family, and, you know, we can't have another character join the show, and that's sort of the end. We're leaving them as winter starts, and they're setting up for winter.
I wanted the Universal Soldier to come back and, like, maybe go in with the Terrians.
Oh, what a nice ending for him. That would have been much better than the cyanide capsule.
Yeah, exactly.
Although maybe the ghost will follow them around for a bit.
He'll still be taking reports, unfortunately.
Was this like one of the, like, do you guys have favorite episodes of the season?
Let's do that when we get to the ratings, maybe, because I think this is some good information to talk about. I assume that's everyone's notes. No one has any other notes to get into, so maybe we get into the ratings of this.
Do we mention how ridiculous that poor actress was?
Yeah.
You definitely found her having to do too much. This is like when someone has to dance on a show. You really hate it.
I always just feel embarrassed for the actors having to do really ridiculous things.
It's their job, Jordan.
I suppose it's the job they signed up for.
Do you guys want to talk at all about like a Mooncross and like
Yeah, do you want to describe the Mooncross? I guess we never did.
Name of the episode and this big event, but it's just two moons narrowly missing each other, or?
Yeah, it is basically like an eclipse, but with two moons. Like, it's a good effect. Like, it's a good effect. You get to see a big moon and a slightly smaller moon in front of it, and the kind of as the two ends of them meet, it like shoots a light out or something.
Yeah.
And apparently that light glows until the moons separate again.
It opens a portal for Terrians to die into, is what I understood.
Yes, I think that's they can only go in during the moon. It's all a little unclear as to why, but it's so magical and mystical.
So my question is like, if there was a moon crossing, or if there was, northern lights, or if there was, shooting stars, which would you be the most excited to go out and watch? I think the moon crossing is still number 3.
I think you're right. I think they kind of set up Mooncross by saying it 45 times. You're like, oh yeah, it's just moons crossing.
It is. I think the excitement of it is that you get to see two moons in the sky for 2 seconds in a sci-fi show. But you're right; it doesn't have like a lot of lasting appeal.
I thought it was funny. I was like, I can't wait to find out like the astronomical explanation of these two moons in this world logic. But you never get it.
There's nothing. Just two moons. Don't worry about it. It's a crazy planet. All right, you guys. Let's rate these episodes, shall we? Will, why don't we start with you on Redemption, the Universal Soldier episode? We usually do this out of 10 if you don't remember.
I'm going to give Universal Soldier 6.5.
6.5.
Yeah.
Do you want to go next or do you want me to go next, Jordan?
You go next.
I'm going to be honest. I enjoyed this episode. I like the Universal Soldier. It was like an episode where something was finally happening on the show, and I just was into the whole thing. So I'm giving it an 8.
I'm actually somewhere right in between. I think it's pretty dumb, but for this show, it was a more entertaining episode, even though I think the execution wasn't great, and I think this could have been a lot better, but I'm going to give it a 7 just because I thought, compared to some of the other episodes we've seen previously, this was pretty entertaining.
This was a lot of dumb fun, I thought.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
And then we'll do Mooncross. You want to start us off again here, Will?
I'm giving Mooncross, part of me wants to give it like a 1 because of
wow.
But then part of me thinks it was awesome. So I'm gonna give it a 5.
Right down the middle.
Yeah. Can't tell if it's awesome or terrible.
Weirdly, I feel somewhat similar about this. Is like some of it was really stupid, and some of it was like, I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm getting all this mythology finally. Like, I don't know why I'm getting it all in one super condensed episode, but I've been waiting for you to fill out some of these questions for me, Earth 2. So I'm a little torn on it as well. I think I'm going to give it a 6.5 just for how clunky it is, but I was still happy to be finally watching an episode where, like, they were filling in the world for me a bit more.
I think this episode in some ways is sort of indicative of the show as a whole. It's functional, like rarely outright bad, but it's fundamentally unmemorable. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 as well.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm not sure if the listener remembers because it was so many months ago, but we are going to take a break from Earth 2 now because we are halfway through the series. We're going to take like a midpoint break. We're going to watch some other series. We have no idea when we're coming back to this yet, but before the year is out, we will be back to finish Earth 2 off.
It's going to feel like coming back and seeing old friends. It's going to be like coming back to your biodome and seeing your ghost mother.
I do agree that I'm probably going to feel nostalgic when we come back to it, I think.
I think so.
Do you know who you're going to have on for the final episodes of the series?
Yeah, your dad and your sister.
Okay. I think that's a great idea.
That's what you were about to pitch to us, right?
I think you should definitely have my dad on the show.
That would be very interesting. I don't know how that would go. Does he know what a podcast is?
He does.
Well, that's a good step. That's good. That would help.
I feel like he would give you a lot of context because he's like, he knows all about like Stargate and he's watched Earth 2 and like as an adult, so he'll remember it and like he'll be able to, dive in with you guys.
It'd be really funny if he like had a very vivid memory of it. He's like, oh yeah, this show's awful. We just watched it because Will would not shut up about it.
Yeah. Every week Will's just like, Earth 2.
Well, I got on this thing talking about how we were going to move on from the show, but I thought before we leave, we should find out where the series is falling at the midway point. What do you think?
Oh, okay,
Jordan?
yeah. Let's punch into the old. What do we call this machine?
Continuum drag computer.
That's the one.
Our mythology is so deep you can't even remember.
I can't remember. Yeah.
All right, give me a sec. All right, gentlemen, you want to know where Earth 2 is coming at the midway point?
I'd love to.
It is currently rated at 5.86.
No, that's probably about right.
I'm surprised it's as low as it is, but there's been some bad episodes.
There's been some bad ones, yeah.
That about wraps it up. Jordan, before we wrap the episode up, since we're not going to come back to Earth 2 for several months, I would like your prediction. Do you think in the next episode, will they be in the middle of winter, or will winter just be over and we never saw any of it?
It'll be over. I don't think they want to have to buy the cast more jackets.
Yeah, they'd have to change where they shoot.
Exactly. I kind of feel like it too, but what I'm going to imagine in these months we're gone, that we're missing all the winter episodes, so when we come back, it'll be like winter is over.
That'll be the first line in the next episode. Like, it's so nice and warm now, finally.
Spring is here.
Yeah.
But yes, that wraps it up for this episode and for Earth 2 for the time being. Will, thank you so much for joining us again and watching these 2 episodes.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
And if you have any thoughts on Earth 2 as we move on to other series for a little bit, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, we'll have some clips of Universal Soldiers for sure on this episode's Instagram stuff at Continuum Drags, that handle.
I should actually put actual Universal Soldiers clips and see if that gets taken down.
Can I make a request that we get the wall when he gets pushed into the wall? I'd be like,
of course.
You make an interesting point.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to find that wall. And that's it. I guess that's it. That wraps up this episode. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I'll see you next week.
See you then. Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rex Seidler, produced by Jordan Dullock and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Hughes.